Sophie Scamps, Kate Chaney, Allegra Spender and co push back very strongly this week. Does that help the government having that Teal support behind your position?
Well, I think what it's demonstrating is that the Australian people want action on climate change. That was evident from the results of the last election. They want a steady transition towards more renewables and reducing emissions from fossil fuels. And that's what our policies are all about. We're having that steady transition because we've got a target of net zero by 2030 and 43% by 2030. Now, Peter Dutton's going to abandon that. If you abandon the target, you abandon the transition. And that means that Australians don't get access to the cheapest form of energy, which is renewable energy. And we don't want to go back to the dark old days of the climate wars. We want to make sure that we make that steady transition and we're on that path to renewables, but we do it in a consistent, reliable manner so that all Australians can keep the lights on, but their energy bills reduce over time because renewables are cheaper.
What are the implications of the electorate redistribution in New South Wales announced yesterday by the ASC? Is there any net gain for either side, do you think?
I think it's pretty even. Look, the boundaries are determined independently by the Australian Electoral Commission. That's the way it should be. In Australia, we have this principle of one vote, one value, which means that as the population changes, the electoral boundaries have to be redistributed. And although population is increasing in New South Wales, it's not increasing at the same rate as, say, Western Australia, where Australians have been drawn to WA by the boom in the resources sector and higher incomes. So that's meant that Victoria and New South Wales will lose a seat. Those boundaries are determined independently by the AEC, but the important thing is that they're only draft boundaries at this stage, and people have the right to object to them for the next 3 weeks. So we'll see what those objections look like. It's up to the individual parties and the individual candidates to put those objections in before we get final boundaries.
Groundbreaking visit, Chinese Premier Li Qiang in Australia today. What do you make of it? Could we see more trade restrictions lifted?
Well, I hope that we will. It's been a policy of this government to try and stabilise the relationship with China, our largest trading partner, because it means jobs for Australians. And we've been successful in having some of those restrictions that were put in place under the previous government on products like beef, like Australian wine removed, and Australian businesses and exporters being able to gain access to those important markets once again. So hopefully we'll see further restrictions lifted and the relationship stabilised further.
As Assistant Defence Minister, where are we at with military threats and our strength? A lot of people watching this program this morning would have no idea where we sit.
Well, we know we're facing uncertain times, particularly within our region, and that's why the government's released a National Defence Strategy. And that's a 10-year blueprint for the investments that we want to make in our defence forces, how we want to grow the Defence Force to ensure that we're capable of defending our nation to meet the challenges of the future. Really, if you were to sum it up in the 3 words, it's investing in people, in power and in posture. We're going to try and grow the Defence Force, our people, they're our most important asset. We're going to invest in new technology and new capability. For instance, AUKUS, the nuclear-propelled submarines, are basically a new surface combatant fleet. HIMARS, high mobility aerial rocket systems. We're going to start manufacturing missiles here in Australia, really bolstering the capability of the Australian Defence Force. And we're going to invest in our posture, particularly in the north. So we're upgrading every single one of our defence bases across the north of Australia. People, power, posture to defend the Australian people into the future.